Hey everybody, thanks for watching today's development fail video. Today we're going to be looking at 10 of the biggest amusement park failures of all time. Going to go ahead and count down from number 10. Make sure you stick around for number 1, my personal favorite, and truly one of the most insane amusement park stories of all time. Coming in at number 10, we have the Warner Brothers Jungle Habitat in West Milford, New Jersey. The Warner Brothers Jungle Habitat was a safari park opened in 1972 and housed over 1,500 animals, including peacocks, baboons, camels, llamas, giraffes, elephants, and tigers. Parts of the park allowed visitors to drive through an area where the animals could even roam free. Another part of the park was set up more like a traditional zoo where visitors could walk through and see various exhibits. In addition to the animals, the park featured a number of Warner Brothers cartoon characters such as Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny. In 1975, in an effort to boost attendance and to create new excitement around the park, Warner Brothers proposed a large addition that would include roller coasters and other park amenities. There was great debate among local residents if it was a good idea, and ultimately in 1976 the expansion was voted down. Increased traffic was the most frequently cited concern by locals who voted against the expansion. Following this rejection and amid increased competition from other theme parks, Warner Brothers decided to close the park. It was open for only 4 years. Despite its short run, the park had a number of high-profile negative incidents. A TV host was injured by a tiger while filming, an Israeli tourist was attacked by a lion, and in 1974, a woman successfully sued the park for injuries she had received from a baby elephant. Following its closure, the park sat abandoned for decades, although in recent years, efforts have been made to clean up the area. Coming in at number 9, we have the Wild West World Park in Park City, Kansas. This park was the brainchild of married couple Thomas and Cheryl Etheridge, for which planning began in the early 2000s. The park was, according to the Etheridges, going to be the only fully Western themed park in the world. Although there are others that are Western themes, according to the Etheridges, these were not Western enough. After 2 years of construction, the park opened in the spring of 2007. Very soon after opening, however, it was evident that the park was in serious trouble. Within 2 months, the park had closed down and the owners were filing for bankruptcy. They cited the bad weather that summer as the reason for the park's failure, but others believe the real reasons were poor planning, unappealing aesthetics, and a generally underwhelming experience provided by the park. The park did not sell in the bankruptcy sale. Equipment that could be salvaged was auctioned off. Most of the rest of the park was demolished. Unfortunately for Thomas Etheridge, the story did not end there. An investigation led to 10 counts of securities fraud against him stemming from investments he had gotten from members of a local church. He was found guilty of 7 and served 3 years in prison, his second time serving 3 years in prison for securities fraud. Moving right along to number 8, we have the Hard Rock Park in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. During the early 2000s, developers near Myrtle Beach, South Carolina were working on plans for an expansive rock and roll themed amusement park. The park would include music-themed rides, games, and performance spaces. Construction on the park began in 2007, and by the 2008 season, the park was open for business. The park received generally positive reviews when it was first opened, but attendance was not as high as the owners had hoped. Due to the financial crisis of 2008, some of the park's plans had to be scaled back, including a substantial advertising campaign. This proved to be one of the park's downfalls as the park suffered from a lack of recognition and publicity. The attendance continued to struggle throughout the first summer. By mid-fall, hours were being cut, and by the end of that season, the park was operating on weekends only. Chapter 11 bankruptcy was filed before the end of the year. The following year, the park reopened under a new name and new management. In an effort to make the park more family-friendly, its name was changed to the Freestyle Music Park. The park struggled again through the 2009 season, and before the end of the year, it had closed for good. A series of lawsuits, mostly related to the financial difficulties, caused further headaches for the owners beginning in 2009. Over the following decade, various plans have been floated to try to revive the park, but none have been particularly successful. Many of the large rides have been relocated, and many of the smaller elements were abandoned or demolished. Moving along, number 7, we have The Son of Beast roller coaster in Kings Island, Ohio. The Son of Beast was built as a sequel to another ride at the Kings Island Amusement Park, which was called Beast. This new roller coaster, which was open for the 2000 season, was the tallest and fastest wooden roller coaster in the world. It was over 200 feet tall and reached a top speed of nearly 80 miles an hour. Additionally, it was one of the only wooden roller coasters to ever feature a loop. Initially, after opening, the ride received fairly positive reviews, although many riders complained of a particularly rough ride. Wooden roller coasters are notorious for their bumpy ride, and for some passengers, this is what gives the wooden roller coasters their charm. In 2006, an effort was made to make for a more comfortable ride for riders. The carts that passengers rode in were swapped out with lighter ones, and the loop was removed. The ride didn't last long after this, however. By 2009, it had closed and was demolished shortly thereafter. Several incidents where riders accused the ride of having caused injuries appeared to be the final straw for the roller coaster. In 2006, a dip in the track sent 27 riders to the hospital with generally minor whiplash-type injuries, and later in 2009, a woman claimed the ride gave her a serious head injury. Although this was not proven, the ride was closed shortly thereafter. For number 6, we have the New York Wheel in Staten Island, New York. Late in the first decade of the 2000s, developers were planning on building a Ferris wheel located in Staten Island's waterfront. Rising over 600 feet, this wheel would be a tourist destination and would provide spectacular views of the New York skyline. It would be the tallest of its kind in the world, that is, if it was ever completed. The construction process was slow and inconsistent from the beginning. The grand opening date for the project began to slip, and hopes of a successful project began to dim. Financing was harder to come by than expected, and in a shockingly fiscally responsible move, both the city and state turned down requests for public funding for the development. Despite these issues, the project pushed forward. Money continued to be shoveled into this dumpster fire of a project throughout the latter half of the 2010s. By the time the project had officially been scrapped in 2018, nearly $500 million had been spent on the project, resulting in a parking garage and incomplete foundation for the Ferris wheel. Earlier this year, it was revealed that a new team plans to revive the project with a target completion date of 2025. They've scaled down the size of the wheel so it will no longer be the largest in the world. It remains to be seen if this project will ever finish. For number 5, we have the Wonderland Amusement Park in Beijing, China. Taking cues from the massive successes of American Disney amusement parks, developers in Beijing wanted to do something similar in the late 1990s. After acquiring a 120-acre plot of land, they began building an amusement park with castles, medieval villages, and other unique attractions. Not long after construction began, the developers began to run into financial issues. By 1998, the project was halted. Some structures had been built, while others sat in a state of partial completion. No progress was made in the next decade until 2008. An attempt to revive the project was made. It was unsuccessful. Around this time, more amusement parks began to open in China with the backing of large international companies, which proved to be the final nail in the coffin for the Wonderland amusement park. It was demolished in 2013 to make way for a shopping center. For number 4, we have another Ferris wheel, the Skyvue Super Wheel in Las Vegas, Nevada. In true Vegas spirit, developers in 2011 planned to build a mega Ferris wheel that would rise almost 50 stories high. Located near the Mandalay Bay and part of a larger multi-phase redevelopment project, the Skyvue promised to provide spectacular views of the Las Vegas Strip below. Construction began in 2011 when thousands of cubic yards of concrete were poured. This formed the foundation and the pillars of the attraction. Although the opening date was originally planned to be late 2011, early 2012, as construction progressed, this target began to slip. In 2015, the site was put up for sale but did not sell. After another 5 years of no progress, the site went up for sale again. This time in 2020, it sold to a group with several key investors from the original Skyvue development group. Interestingly, this was not the only proposed mega Ferris wheel in Las Vegas at the time. The High Roller, a slightly larger Ferris wheel, opened in 2014 near the Link Hotel. The Voyager, a Ferris wheel that would have been larger than both of these, was proposed but never made it past the planning stages. For number 3, we have the Schlitterbahn Waterpark in Kansas City, Kansas. In 2005, plans were announced for the first construction of a Schlitterbahn water park outside the state of Texas. It would be the centerpiece of a larger $750 million development project on a 350-acre plot of land in Kansas City. Construction began in 2007, and by the summer of 2009, the water park was open for business. It did see some slight changes due to the recession of 2008, but despite this, when it opened, it included a dozen water rides as well as restaurants and shops. It was expanded in 2011 when 6 more water rides were added. In 2016, however, a tragic accident occurred, one that the park would never recover from. Several years before, in 2012, a new ride was announced. After several delays, the ride called Verrückt, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but German for the word insane, opened and became the centerpiece of the park. It featured an initial drop of 170 feet before rising back up a 50-foot hump. Riders would reach speeds of 60 to 65 miles per hour. Tragically, on August 7, 2016, one of the rafts went airborne at the lower hump, killing one child and injuring 2 women. The accident gained massive national attention as the boy killed was the son of a Kansas representative. Right away, the ride was closed and a review began to see exactly what had gone wrong. Engineering reviews determined that the incident had occurred because of serious problems with the roller coaster. First, the ride did not meet updated safety codes, which would have required over-the-shoulder harnesses for riders and an upstop mechanism which would have prevented the raft from going airborne. Despite these issues, the ride had been in use for 2 years without similar incidents. So what was it that happened on this day that led to such a catastrophic outcome? Engineers determined that the weight distribution of this particular raft was the cause. The young boy, who weighed 74 pounds, was sitting in the front seat. In the 2 seats behind him were 2 women who weighed 275 and 197 pounds. Although the combined total weight of the 3 of them was just barely under the weight limit of 550 pounds, the massively uneven distribution from front to back led to the terrible outcome of this particular ride. The park did reopen shortly after, but its reputation had been ruined. Took a further hit with several more rides closing for not complying with safety standards. 2018 was the last season this park was in operation. The park sat unused for several years as officials tried to determine the best path forward. Ultimately, it was demolished in 2021, and there are plans to build a youth sports complex in its place. At number 2, we have Wonderland Eurasia, formerly known as Ankara or something like that. When it was planned, the Ankara amusement park was going to be one of the largest in the world. Construction began in 2013 and progressed over the next several years despite several substantial construction delays. Legal and political battles regarding the use of the land were the primary cause of the delays. When the park finally opened in 2019, it was celebrated with a number of Turkish dignitaries, including the president of Turkey himself. The president declared the park a symbol of pride for all of Turkey. Despite the fanfare, there were already concerns about the long-term viability of the park. Delays in construction had led to some rides deteriorating faster than expected. Even on opening day, reportedly some of the rides were already experiencing substantial rusting issues. Within 1 year of opening, the massive park, which featured 17 roller coasters tied for third most in the world, had closed down. Inconsistent attendance stemming from economic and political instability in Turkey, combined with the concerns about the quality of the park, were cited as primary factors for the park's lack of success. Now, before we get to number 1, I want to do an honorable mention for Action Park in Vernon Township, New Jersey. This is a controversial one because I know some people would say it's the greatest amusement park of all time. Others would point to the safety record and suggest that that may not be the case. This park opened in the late 1970s. It featured a number of exciting new rides and was one of the first water parks in the United States. Its edgy take on amusement parks, combined with relative proximity to New York City, made it a major success for the first few years in business. As numerous accidents and injuries began to accumulate, however, the park's reputation went from being edgy to downright dangerous. In 1982, there were 2 deaths at the park, and in 1984, there were 2 more. The wave pool, also sometimes referred to as the grave pool, was notoriously dangerous. A staff of 12 lifeguards were reported to make an average of 30 rescues per week, a number that far exceeds most pools. The Cannonball Loop was another infamous ride, but was open for only a month before the state shut it down. It was an enclosed water slide that featured a small diameter circular loop at the bottom. In the short time it was open, back injuries and bloody noses were said to be commonplace. Other incidents throughout the park included drownings, multiple head and neck injuries, broken bones, and an electrocution. The park also became a haven for underage drinking, which didn't do anything to improve its safety record. As injuries and deaths began to add up, so too did the lawsuits. One by one, the park was forced to shut down individual rides due to safety and legal issues. By the late 1980s, attendance began to decline, and by the mid 1990s, the park had closed. It reopened with a new name and some changes. In 2017, Johnny Knoxville made a movie about the park, although the movie was panned as one of his worst movies. So, what do you think? Does this one deserve to be considered a failure for the injuries and deaths and legal issues, or is it a success for its legacy as a edgy and exciting park for teenagers and young adults in the 1970s? And finally, coming in at number one, we have the Flip Flap Railway in Coney Island, New York. The first roller coaster to feature a loop in the United States opened in 1895 in Coney Island, New York. Despite being a relatively short ride that could only support 2 riders at a time, thrill seekers eagerly awaited the opportunity to ride it. Before being open to the public, the ride was tested for safety using sandbags and monkeys as stand-ins for people. After receiving very few complaints from the monkeys, it was determined to be safe enough for the public. Immediately upon opening, however, riders complained of a harsh ride and whiplash injury. The small diameter of the loop and the circular shape of the loop, rather than the standard modern teardrop shape, caused massive G-forces on the riders. It is estimated that riders were subjected to a peak of 12 Gs. Although they were only subjected to this force for a short period of time, it was enough to cause a number of substantial injuries and countless other minor injuries. By comparison, the modern leaders in G-force today are the Tower of Terror in South Africa, Shockwave in Texas, and Desert Storm in Arizona. Riders of these 3 rides are all subjected to a peak of about 6 Gs. The ride was short-lived due to the pain and discomfort that it caused, combined with the poor economics, only being able to have 2 riders at a time. By 1902, it was removed from Coney Island's amusement park. So there you have it, the top 10 biggest amusement park development fails of all time. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also check out the Instagram page at development_fails, where we have literally hundreds of other interesting development, construction, and engineering stories like these.